Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Dogs of War gaming YouTube channel. This will be another episode of Octagon Play. I'm Angelo. I played this game a couple of days ago. I've been thinking about what the game is going to be like in the post-Clot Netrunner world, with the Valley releasing next week. Clot is coming out, which is going to put a damper on Fast Advance, hopefully. And this means that I'm expecting to see more Glacier-style decks come back into the forefront of the meta. My local meta, specifically down here in Florida as well, doesn't have very many Fast Advance players in it anymore, and it's more people playing more Glacier-style decks, such as my Blue Sun opponent that you see here. This is just a random matchup on Octagon, and it just so happens that it's Blue Sun, and I am playing Kate for the ID. So the idea behind this deck is to use Kate for her awesome reduce the cost by 1 ability in combination with the supplier, who you see here, who I draw into, hosting a bunch of resources and hardware on him, getting it into play for cheap. And then for the main icebreaker of the deck, we're using Sage. For those of you that don't know, Sage is a new breaker that we just got recently. It counts as both a decoder and a fractor, so it can break both barriers and code gates, and its strength is equal to the cost of the unused MU that you have. So this deck is basically designed to get lots of money, doing this through Jerp economy, through things like Underworld contacts, daily casts, and data folding. And then installing Sage, hopefully on top of a Dinosaurus, getting a bunch of unused MU in play, and then finally to break sentries, we're running a copy of Creeper. Creeper is awesome in this deck because you will have at least 2 link, and which means Creeper takes up no MU, which means he doesn't fight for Sage's MU and strength cost. So here basically what you end up seeing is me digging for resources and hopefully my copy of Sage and Dinosaurus. Octagon's a little weird about start of turn things, so you have to make sure you do them right, and here you see me adjusting daily cast so that it comes into play and I still get the credits off it. This is what makes the supplier so good, because daily cast goes from being a 3-cost install down to a 1-cost install, so you net more credits. Here you see me play a data folding onto Mr. Supplier, and then I draw some more cards. So this deck is kind of slow. It can take a little bit of time to build up, and this is my first iteration of this deck, so it wasn't as fine-tuned at this point. So here you see our Blue Sun player. He's iced up both HQ, R&D, and looks like what he's trying to build out to be his scoring remote. Let's see what he does from this point. So of course, with Octagon play, it can be a little bit slower sometimes, as players, have to pay attention to what's going on the screen. So he installs another piece of ice over that remote, and you can see he's starting to build up a scoring server here. And then he draws another card, and presumably he'll either draw another card or take some credits. So the problem with Blue Sun is if you run on him early, they're just going to res ice in your face and then get the credits back. So it's very hard to tax a Blue Sun player unless you can force him to res multiple pieces of ice in the same turn. So in this case, I'm more than happy to sit back and build my rig, because the Blue Sun player is going to want to do the same thing. They're not going to score out agendas very fast. Usually they play large 3-5 agendas. So I'm not too concerned this early about him scoring out early points on me. So you see I get a copy of data folding in play. Unfortunately, I haven't found any of my mem chips that have my link on them yet, so Underworld Contacts isn't doing me very good right now. But I do have Dinosaurus installed on the supplier as well, ready to come into play when I need them. And you saw me install an E3 feedback implants last turn. The feedback implants are awesome. They allow Sage to break the first subroutine for 2 credits and then 1 credit for every subroutine after that. Makes Sage very, very efficient. So he plays out Housekeeping. Housekeeping is the new Wayland current that basically says whenever I install a card, I have to trash a card from my hand. So the problem is that the supplier specifically triggers as an install as well. So every time I pull one of those cards off the supplier, now I have to trash a card from my hand. I draw into a Plascrete, which goes right onto the supplier. He's not going to be scorching me anytime soon, but I do want that Plascrete in play. That way, I can get in play dirt cheap. And there you see me bring out my Sage on my Dino. So currently Sage is sitting at strength 4 because of that SMC that's in play right now. But hey, that's not bad. There's a lot of strength 4 barriers out there like Eli and stuff like that that Sage will just now chew through for 3 credits. That's a credit more efficient than Corroder is, for example. So he ices up R&D a little bit more. And he clicks for some more credits. So I get the last of my daily cast credits. I go ahead and install that Plascrete. I think I made a mistake here, and I should have trashed a card for that housekeeping. And I guess I missed it. And so did he. So that's unfortunate, but mistakes happen. Oh, there I go. I discarded the Maker's Eye there for the install effect. So yeah, housekeeping is a really good card. There were some questions about whether it could actually kill you if you installed the last card in your hand, and it in fact can't. That's been ruled in the latest FAQ as well. It is not doing damage, it is just forcing you to discard a card from your hand, and at no point in time can the runner die if he is forced to discard, only if he has actually dealt damage that forces him to discard a card and he has none. So here you see him ice up Archives and drop an upgrade on HQ. I'm assuming it's probably a Chrysium Grid or something of that sort. So here you see me bring out my second Plascrete, so now I have my Scorch Protection in play, but unfortunately I had to discard an R&D interface. So you've seen me dump 2 multi-access cards now, which is probably not the greatest in the world, but you really want to get those Plascretes in play against most Wayland decks, especially HP who like to Scorch. So losing the multi-access, while it does suck, doesn't prevent me from winning the game. However, not having both Plascretes in play could very well prevent me from, or cause me to lose the game if I get scorched to death. So I played against a lot of Blue Sun, and I can tell you they don't like it when you don't run and they can't do a lot of their credit gain stuff. So you can see here, in effect, I'm almost kind of keeping him poor, and he's being forced to click for credits each turn because I'm not running on his servers and letting him res ice. So this is in my favor, in my opinion, because I continue to build my rig, and eventually I'll be able to break anything he reses on the board. Or so I thought. Spoiler alert, eventually he does get enough Strength 10 stuff on the board that I was only able to get Sage to Strength 9 with this current build of the deck, and it becomes a little hard to do things. But as of right now, I'm sitting pretty good. I am trying to dig for the rest of my MU, though, which I am unfortunately not getting. But the nice thing is I can keep hosting cards on the supplier, and if I do eventually find my wonderful MU and or Link, those Underworld contacts will come in very handy. So it's nice now that I have a copy of SMC and Dinosaurus in my hand, so that housekeeping is not as dangerous now. When I install something off of the supplier, I can just pitch a duplicate card like the Dinosaurus or the SMC, and it's not a big deal. The SMC at this point is only going to be used to grab my Sentry Breaker if I don't draw into it by the time I need it. Otherwise, it's just going to sit there and take up MU, which is bad, and I need to actually get rid of it soon. So there you go. He finally decides to start scoring an agenda, presumably. He drops that agenda in that remote there. I bring out that daily cast. I trash the Dinosaurus because of it, and I diesel. Unfortunately, I diesel into a diesel, so that's not the greatest in the world. But I figure it's maybe time to start making him res some ice, so I'm going to go ahead and try and run this remote and see what's available. So, waiting to see if he's going to res this first piece of ice here. He chooses not to, and he reses a toll booth. I am currently at Strength 4, unfortunately. I should have popped the SMC, or maybe I do. Yep. Nope, I don't pop the SMC like a dummy. I should have. Instead, I let it go, and I end up ending the run, which is... No, wait, nope, I do go get Creeper. So there you go. So Creeper allows me to... What am I doing here? So, I think I misplayed here. Creeper should have allowed me to raise my MU back up high enough that I could have broke that toll booth. And I think with my inexperience of the deck, I kind of forgot here that that was actually the case. So anyways, I diesel for my last click, and I'll pitch duplicate copies of SMC and E3 feedback, or Sage, rather. So now I don't need the E3s anymore, or the Sages the SMCs anymore. My apologies. And the duplicate copies of E3 feedback implants are going to be kind of useless because E3 triggers on itself. But, there are cards out there that can help blow up your rig, and so having duplicate copies of some of your core pieces in play can't be so bad. So here he is, he's asking me what the current strength is on Sage, and I confirmed that it does in fact is strength 5, and I could have broken that toll booth, and I forgot to. So here my opponent's thinking about what he's going to do. A Sage kind of puts you in this weird situation where you have to look at your ice and go, well, if he keeps pumping that MU, what can I do to keep him out? So on a side note, as I look back at this game, oh yeah, Sage is at strength 5 right now because that creeper doesn't have the second link it needs to be considered a free card right now. So I'm going to have to dig again, hopefully find some link, which I do finally find right there. You can see I finally drew into the Dyson mem chip. I'll host that on the supplier. It'll get installed for free next turn. I'll put Katie into play, and then Katie becomes my long-term economy engine here, put some credits on her, and end my turn. So what I'm basically doing here is giving up that agenda in the remote for him to score it, for me to finish building my rig. Now, at the same time, I'm also thinking maybe that isn't an agenda because maybe he would have already scored it. And as we can see here, since he installed a card and did not continue to advance it, there's a good potential fact that it is not in an agenda at all. So now Sage is at strength 7. So now I'm breaking most pieces of ice in the game at this point. There's very few that I can't. I'll continue to put more drip econ onto the supplier. So there goes out another daily casts. I see a Sure Gamble and another mem chip. So mem chips are awesome. They might as well basically say Sage has +1 strength every time you install them. So I'll be installing the mem chips as they come up because it's basically like free money. All those mem chips are free +1 strength, so you're not spending the credits to get that strength out of there. And with Katie and the supplier, those Dyson mem chips actually are free to completely install off of him, so that's just fantastic. So now you see my opponent, he reses his Jackson Howard. He's going to start digging for cards. Presumably either he is currently agenda flooded or he can't find any of his agendas at all, or he's digging for some ice that might give him an answer to the current strength of Sage. So he installs another card on HQ. So presumably one of those is those are upgrades of some sort. Probably a Chrysium Grid and some other type of upgrade. And he discards down. So as you can see, my opponent's been kind of stuck at 15 credits because I've really only given him that toll booth to bring back. So I install that other mem chip and then I go ahead and run on his Jackson, force him to use it. You never let a Jackson sit out open in the wild like that. And there I go and see one of my R&D interfaces. And I'm going to go ahead and run on R&D for my last click here. So let's see. What is the outermost piece of ice? He reses a Taurus. Unfortunately, I have Creeper in play. So I'll go ahead and break that as I do not want to have hardware installed, and losing Dinosaurus at this point would be very bad. So Creeper breaks it for 4. Not the most efficient sentry breaker in the game, but, for the fact that there's not a lot of sentries out there that are being ran that are higher than strength 5 or even near strength 5, it's not so bad. And then he reses an Enigma, which I make short work of simply with Sage. Oh, and I paid 1 too much for breaking that Taurus, apparently. So Sage will cost me 3 to get through here. So 2 to break the first subroutine, and E3 to break the second. And I'll go ahead and access. And just see a restructure. So that ends my turn. But now he's got some ice resed. He can pull that up if he wants to gain some money back. Which is always the hard part about playing against Blue Sun is, hey, they resed ice, and now they can return the ice back to their hand and get all the money back for it. But in this case, it looks like he's just going to click for credits and install another card. So he's now sitting at 7. There's no 7-cost piece of ice in the game that I can't break with Sage currently where it's sitting. But again, I'm all about the econ right now, so I'm going to keep adding up this drip economy. At this point, my hope is that he installs something in the remote that he thinks is an agenda, and I just go run it and grab it. Especially given that I don't know what that outermost piece of ice is that he just installed. Making sure I always have enough credits in play to break whatever gets put on the board is rather important. So we see another restructure come out of there, and a third upgrade going on to HQ. I imagine he was probably expecting to play against people running things like Account Siphon or Wanton Destruction, so he's probably got some Chrysium grids. Obviously not all of those can be Chrysium grids, but at least one of those is more than likely a Chrysium grid, and then I don't know if I know what the other ones are currently, so I start my turn. I still have a daily cast and a E3 feedback plant sitting on the supplier, but I go ahead and install that R&D interface, and I draw a couple more cards. So now I have a Maker's Eye in my hand. So now I've got the 2 cards that I'll see because of R&D interface and another 2 from a Maker's Eye. So that's a 4-card dig. So now all I have to do is hope is that outermost piece of ice is something I can get through. I'm assuming that whatever's installed in the root of that remote over there is something like a Cerebral Overwriter or something like that. A trap that he thought he could bait me into running. And he goes ahead and trashes it and installs and advances another card. So now I go ahead and start my turn and click 1. It looks like I'm going to Maker's Eye straight into the R&D interface. Now, I probably should have installed that Dyson mem chip first, just to get another point of strength on Sage, but instead I went ahead and made the run. And it's only an Excalibur, so I can't make any more runs this turn because I can't break the Excalibur. But that's okay. I'm going to see, 4 cards on this run, so, that's fine. And if that agenda down there is a 3-5, he can't score it next turn anyways. So I see 4 cards here. So there's a high-risk investment right on top. Cleaners, so there's 6 points right there. Unfortunately, no more. But hey, 6 points right at the top of the deck in 1 run, you can't beat that. And here I'll just draw back up. And apparently I miscounted my clicks, and I'll just add some money on KD for later. So I pass the turn to him. Nope, not Katie. Apparently I'm going to go ahead and host my R&D interface, and I just installed it either way. So, who cares? Made a mistake there. Not a big deal. It's Octagon. So he goes ahead and bounces the Taurus back to his hand, gets some credits back. Now that Excalibur is a problem. There's not a lot of mythic ice in the game currently, especially ones that can't be broken. So here he goes. He uses a Punitive, and I forget that Punitive has a trace involved. So you see me here try to trigger the counters on Plascrete, and then I remember to myself, oh, wait a second. All I have to do is beat the trace, which I have more than enough credits because he's not pumping it. This is where I kind of just got ahead of myself, and I should have waited for the trace to fire before I triggered the counters on the Plascrete carapace. So instead, I'll match his trace because he didn't pump it, and the damage won't fire. So I think he was just either hoping to bleed credits, or he just didn't realize how much link I had. The amount of link I've got in play more than helps offset the cost of the Punitive Counter-Strike credits, unless he was to dump a lot of money into it. Currently, I'm sitting on 3 link, so that's pretty good against a Punitive. And he tries the Punitive again. So like I said, I think at this point, either he had a lot of cards in his hand, or he realized he wasn't going to kill me with the Punitive and figured he would just use it as maybe like a tax on my credits. But again, I have so much link, it's only costing me $4 to avoid, 6 points worth of meat damage. So that was his turn. He passes over to me. I go ahead and install that daily cast finally, especially because that housekeeping's gone. Trying to figure out how to get rid of that Plascrete sitting over there, the virtual one, but yeah, we'll just leave it there. It's not a big deal. So I can keep running R&D here, which I do. I can't break the Excalibur, but I'm convinced at this point that that's maybe not an agenda down there. given that he didn't score it last turn and tried to kill me, and I can see 3 cards in R&D, which means he's R&D locked at this point. So I felt like the better play was to make sure he's not drawing agendas off R&D, rather than trying to run a remote, which, since he didn't advance it, is probably not an agenda. And there you see me trying to figure out how to get rid of that Plascrete Carapace again, sitting over there. So it looks like my gamble was wrong, and it was in fact an agenda that was sitting in that remote. So it just goes to show you, you should always let remotes sit. Now that's the best place for a curtain wall to be. Inside like that, it's only strength 6, which means I can actually get through it right now. So now Sage is sitting at strength 8. And here, looks like I'm going to make a run on HQ. I'm thinking about it. And then again, it's like, do I see 1 card a turn from HQ, or do I see 3 cards at the top of R&D? Now, the smart play here would have probably been to have ran HQ, but instead I decided to check Archives. He's been discarding a lot of cards, has no Jackson in play. You can tell he's looking at his archives to make sure there's no agendas there. So he goes and gives me the access. And here I go, digging for more cards in R&D. So this was probably a bad play on my part. I've already seen most of these cards as it is. He didn't overdraw last turn, so I'm really seeing as 1 new card by doing that. My clicks probably would have been better spent running on HQ and pulling cards out of there. But unfortunately, that is not what happened. So he returns that curtain wall back to his hand, which gives him 14 credits. And now we're starting to see the real power of Blue Sun. When they can start bouncing curtain walls around, it gets very, very powerful. And now at this point, I'm completely locked out of R&D. I cannot break a strength 10 curtain wall at all. So he uses the Oversight AI to bring it up for free, which means if he ever wants to return it to his hand, he'll get 14 credits, and it only cost him 1, so he nets 13 off it. It's a very common tactic with Blue Sun. So now I've got him run on his hand. Figure if I can't get an R&D, then we'll get into his hand, and we'll see if we can pull the game-winning agenda from there. I'm on 6, he's on 3. It means I need 1 more agenda, and he needs 2. So he reses the Enigma, which I easily break. The inside piece of ice. He's contemplating whether to res or not. With 20 credits, I feel like he should. Oh, apparently I forgot to break both subroutines, and he was waiting to see if I was going to or not. I should have used the E3 there. I did not. So he reses a Firewall, which again, Sage breaks right through for 2 credits. And I got an access, so we're going to have to see what all these wonderful upgrades installed on the bottom of this route. So we see a Chrysium Grid, which has really no effect on any of my gameplay at all. See 1 card from his hand, and it's a Taurus. Go ahead and access the rest of these. Research Station, well, we don't want him having extra cards in his hand, so we'll trash that. And we'll take a look at this other hand. It's another Research Station, which seems to be very common in Blue Sun now. A lot of players have been playing with Research Stations, I've noticed lately, with Blue Sun to get that increased hand size. So I don't care about the Chrysium Grid. I've got no effects that trigger on a successful run. So I just leave it there. No point in wasting the 5 credits to trash it. So he goes ahead and returns that curtain wall to his hand, knowing full well that he can get the credits back for it, and then just reinstall it in the same spot, and he's no worse for the wear. That seems to be a thing that a lot of Blue Sun players like to do, even when they don't have to, is to return a piece of ice like a curtain wall back to their hand. You know, if you hard resed it for 14, then you spend 14 to res it again after you bounced it back to your hand and got your 14 credits back, you didn't gain anything. The real value there, of course, is the surprise factor. Did you reinstall a curtain wall? Did you install something else? Here he notices that if he can just over-advance this firewall far enough, he can actually lock me out of his headquarters as well. Of course, he doesn't know that I don't have any other MU boosts in the deck currently, or at least not enough to get to 10. He's just suspecting that I don't, or he's trying to get it out of range of what I'm currently at. So right now I can break up to strength 9, And it's sitting at 7, so I slide through and I pull another card from his hand. And unfortunately, it is a Scorched Earth, which I called earlier, but it is not anything I can use. So now I'm just going to keep running his hand. That's the only option I have at this point. I pretty much guessed that that's a curtain wall sitting in front of R&D, the same one that he just bounced back. So while HQ is still open to me, I'm just going to keep running and hope to God that I pull the game-winning agenda. And I see another Scorched Earth. So of course, that means he either has 2 Scorched Earths in his hand, or the randomization algorithm in Octagon is showing me the same one over and over. So, you know, those are the breaks. So here I go for the third run. Housekeeping, another one. And I'll put some more bucks on Katie, because you never know when you need a large burst of credits. That's the nice thing about this deck with the drip economy and the fact that Sage doesn't require any credits to boost its strength, is that you can actually run fairly cheaply and fairly low on credits, because if you look at right now, I'm getting 5 credits a turn at the start of my turn from Underworld Contacts and Data Folding. And now I am officially locked out of his HQ server as well. I cannot break that Strength 10 firewall. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep taking credits, and eventually he has to install something in that remote, and when he does, I will run over there and hopefully steal it, and it'll be the game-winning point. So now it's just a matter of me taking money each turn and patiently waiting for him to install an agenda. And he has to. I mean, he can't fast advance out an agenda. He's playing Wayland, Blue Sun, so he's going to have to put something in that remote, and he's going to have to advance it. So he takes some more money, just like I'm doing. Now, in future versions of this deck, I've actually corrected the problem of Sage not being able to break a curtain wall, because Blue Sun is so prevalent right now. I've put in more memory boosts into the deck so that I can actually get through a curtain wall, get my strength above 10, so it's not a problem. So at that point, really the only thing that will keep Sage from breaking anything in the game is either it's a Mythic Ice, or if somebody over advances a card like a Firewall so many times that it's just out of Sage's range to break. Data Suckers seem like they'd be an interesting choice to add into this deck as well, but there's no real room for it that I can find right now. And I don't make a ton of runs each turn, and so I don't know that they would synergize very well. And the fact that they would take up MU and Sage just straight gains boost from MU, Data Suckers didn't seem like the right answer for helping get through those higher strength pieces of ice. So he bounces that Enigma back, and he installs a new piece of ice over the remote. Presumably, that's another Enigma. And he installs a new piece of ice on HQ. And he ends his turn. So I take some more money on Katie. And I'm just going to credit up again. Because again, there's nothing else I can really do at this point. There's no other answers in my deck, as I've drawn it out already, for what he's doing. So now it's just a matter of, does he install an agenda, and can I go get it? So he does, in fact, install. And then he takes some credits. And now's my time to run. So, res the first piece of ice. Does not res. Res the second piece of ice. It is a Janus. I can break a Janus. That is not a problem. Costs a bunch of money, but yeah, we have plenty of that. I'm sitting on 42 credits right now in my bank and 24 on Katie. Breaking a Janus is not a big deal. Ask for permission to access. And what do we have? Oh, he's asking if I broke them all. He didn't see the E3 implants breaking the rest of them. And it's Jackson Howard, who he'll go ahead and pop. Move some cards back into his deck. I'll go ahead and install some more E3 feedback implants, because why not? Put some more credits on Katie. And pass my turn. So weirdly enough, he used that Jackson for I'm not sure exactly what reason, but all he got back was an oversight AI, a restructure, and a hedge fund. So, he installed the Jackson maybe to bait me into the run, but there was really no reason to. I've had enough credits that even with that, I can still get in, and he's got plenty of credits himself, anyways. That having the Janus rezzed on the board and then bouncing it with Blue Sun back to his hand doesn't net him anything. It could very well simply be that he had no other cards to play and just wanted to put something into play as well. So here you go again. He installs and advances. I figure, yeah, let's take all the money off of Katie. There's not a lot of games where you'll have 63 credits. And I make the run. And there's another curtain wall. So I'll go, all right, well, let's make the last run on R&D. Locked out everywhere else. And the final curtain wall is rezzed. So at this point, I go ahead and tell him I'll concede. There's nothing I can do to score any points at this point. Strength 10 barriers I just can't get through. And that's it. The deck did really well. It performed exactly the way it was supposed to against these big Glacier-style decks. Simply put, though, I just can't get through the Strength 10 curtain walls at that point. He comments that the game is hard, and I thought it was pretty fun. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Stick around. There'll be more content coming up. And like and subscribe. Have a good day. Bye.